Hello and welcome to Name of Show Here, the show that hopefully will give Nanaimo people something to nosh on. I am your host, Troy Hannafin. Tonight we're going to be discussing a healthcare system servicing over 400,000 people in the Central and North Island area that is inadequate to some, or some say is inadequate for our current population and are unprepared for one of the fastest growing and aging populations in Canada. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom, as we have the NRHD advocating and pushing for improvements that consists of 5 critical projects necessary to right the ship. And to help me navigate this topic, I have 3 of the most qualified individuals on the island to discuss this. To my right, I have Chair Ian Thorpe. You're the chair of the NRHD, correct?
The NRHD board, yes, I am currently the chair.
Fantastic. And I don't think you need an introduction, but our very own mayor of Nanaimo, Mr. Mayor Leonard Krug. Thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
And down at the end there, we have, last but not least, of course, we have a chairman of the NMSES and radiologist, Dr. David Coupland. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I'm going to start with you, Ian,
Sure.
if you don't mind, because I'd like you to tell us what is the role of the NRHD and what is your role within that?
Sure, thanks, Troy. And I'm glad you're asking that to start off with, because I think a lot of people don't have a good understanding of the regional district overall, and especially the Nanaimo Regional Hospital District Board. We're an independent entity which is tasked each year with providing capital funding to Island Health to support capital health projects and new facilities in our region. And we're a board of governors comprised of elected officials from the regional district, which takes in the area between Cedar in the south up to Qualicum Bay in the north. So it encompasses not only the city of Nanaimo, but also several other municipalities and outlying areas. As of now, I am honored to be the board of that, or the chair of that board.
Excellent. And what activities did the board undertake to identify these 5 projects?
Well, I give credit to Dr. Coupland and some of his colleagues who several years ago brought to the regional board's attention the critical issue of healthcare needs in our area. And so our hospital board had a look at that and decided, quite rightly, to make it a priority to raise more funds to contribute towards the projects that we see as necessary in the community.
Nice. And how does the foundation, the NRHD, partner with other organizations?
We work very closely with a number of other partners, starting with Island Health, who we have to collaborate with, of course, to determine priority projects. We also work in conjunction with various community partners, such as the Hospital Foundation, the local First Nation, and others that we see as being totally interested in and involved with the healthcare system.
Which is great, because you don't just have one narrow idea of what needs to happen, right? It's a, it's a cooperative.
And Dr. Coupland and his expertise and his colleagues have been very valuable in identifying some of those areas.
Okay. And Mayor Krug, how many communities does the NRGH serve? I know you touched on that, but I mean, what are we talking about size-wise, population?
Population-wise, the regional district, I think we're closing in around 170,000 now. The city of Nanaimo has 107,000 of those residents. You've got Lanceville itself, several more thousand, I think around 3,500. You've got the town of Parksville as well, which I think is somewhere between 10 and 15,000. You've got the town of Qualicum Beach. And plus you've got all those outlying areas, Nanoose, Hilliers, Arrington, Coombs, Qualicum Bay, all of those areas with people reliant on Nanaimo Regional General Hospital for intensive medical services. And as you've pointed out in your opening, we're north of the Malahat, we're talking roughly 460,000 people. This is the tertiary hospital. This is the place where you're supposed to be able to get the level of care consistent with the kind of population numbers we have and consistent with the complexity of care. You also mentioned the aging population. I make jokes about it, but Qualicum Beach is the oldest community in the country. Median age is something north of 66 years, I believe, whether it's 66 or 67, inconsequential. They're the oldest community. Parksville is coming in not far behind. That kind of population requires cardiac services, obviously, all kinds of services that Dr. Coupland's far more qualified to talk about than I am. But yes, we serve a big area. And when I say we, I mean the hospital board, because the regional directors and the city directors sit on that board.
Thank you. And we hear the word tertiary over and over again, and somebody like me had to look it up. So I'm hoping I'm hoping Dr. Coupland can give us an idea of what does it exactly mean to be a tertiary hospital, and if we are one, why do we find ourselves inadequately prepared for this type of stuff? If you could tackle that, sorry.
That's okay, thanks. So I'm the president of the medical staff, and I'm here representing our patients from Central North Island and our staff, all our staff. So that's really why I'm here. As Leonard said, 460,000 people over the last 20 to 30 years. We've grown enormously. We do have the first, third, and fifth oldest populations in Canada, north of the Malahat. And you can imagine what the medical needs that have resulted from that and have rapidly escalated and are continuing to. So we were designated the tertiary hospital for Central North Island 2008. And depending on where you draw the line, that's 460 if you include Cowichan, but if upwards, we're at least 400,000 or above. So tertiary really means specialized services provided through specialists. We have lots of generalist family docs in providing care in those hospitals, but we have specialty programs such as cardiology, neurology, oncology, hematology, gastroenterology. Those are some of the main ones. There's a list of about 12 or 13 we've identified, but meaning we would have all those programs available for all the residents of Central North Island to access. Right now, they don't have any of those.
When you and I were when you and I were talking this week, you were telling me that Victoria's got 2 tertiary hospitals for less people than what we have.
Well, they kind of combine the two. They've got certain services at each,
okay.
But they do have 2 tertiary hospitals, and their population, according to the 2021 census and the expected growth rates, is about 445 to 450, and we're growing faster as well. So we've surpassed them, we're growing faster, and they do have 2 large hospitals with all the services.
Now, I was wondering, Ian, the NRHD is sort of taken on this proactive or advocacy for these priorities and stuff like that.
Yes.
And in the past, they really didn't do that. Did you guys make a conscious choice to change tact and go after this and try and promote?
I'd say that we decided to focus on this area of service because we saw it as the area that has the greatest need, Todd, and as Dr. Coupland and Leonard have said, we are underserved, unfortunately, in the healthcare facilities in this region. And that's no knock against the staff at our hospital who do a marvelous job, but the facility that they are having to work in is inadequate, and they cannot offer the services to our citizens that a community of this size should be able to offer. So the hospital district focused in on healthcare, and with the help of Island Health and with the help of the professionals in the field, we identified 5 major projects that we wanted to see come to our region to improve the offerings that we can give in the area of health.
And what were those 5 projects you identified?
I'm glad you asked that because they are top of mind for our directors, and in no particular order, but I'll start with a new patient tower at NRGH. We are badly overcrowded every day in our hospital. It's an old building. It's, I think, 61 years old now. It is functionally obsolete, and it no longer meets modern hospital standards. So that makes it difficult to attract doctors to this area, and it makes it very difficult for us to properly service our patients. So new patient tower. Secondly, cardiac catheterization lab for heart treatment. We're the largest region, I believe, in Canada that does not have a cardiac cath lab for heart-related issues. We cannot provide operations here. We have to send patients to Victoria or the mainland, and in those cases, time is of the essence. So it's a dangerous situation, lack of a cath lab. So that was number 2. Third, a new cancer center for cancer treatments here in Nanaimo. We can provide chemotherapy, but cancer patients must travel back and forth over the Malahat to Victoria for radiation treatment. And that is really unfair on the citizens of Nanaimo and our region that need those treatments. So a new cancer center is third. A high acuity unit, which is specialized beds for an area of the hospital which is just below intensive care. So a high acuity unit. And fifth, a new long-term care facility for patients that are older and need to be in a facility dedicated to their needs, who are right now possibly taking up some hospital beds at the regional hospital when they could be better served in a more specialized area.
I was going to say, in conjunction with the new patient tower, would the long-term care facility, which I hear it's approved, it's going forward, and it's slated for 2025 and completion in 2027, will that help take some of the burden off of the bed situation that we have right now in NRGH?
I'm certainly hopeful that it will, and I don't know if Dr. Coupland or Leonard can speak to that further, but that's my hope, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have about anywhere from 40 to 60 ALC, acute long-term care people in the hospital at any time. I think last count was about 47. So in theory, we will be able to move them out and have 40 hospital beds for people coming in. And right now, that we can't, those beds are taken up by people who are just there until they get placed. It can take months.
And how many total beds do we have right now at NRGH?
346.
346.
And we're routinely running at 420 a day.
Wow.
And then we have at least 40 of those beds taken up by ALC patients. So we're functionally 300.
So it's critically important to get the people out of or increase the bed count at least, right? So you have comfort of care.
We need to increase it. And so the long-term care beds are a real good thing. But we need as Ian said, we need a new facility. And I was talking about programs before. Many of the programs we can put in without the new facility, but many we can't. So we need both. We need form and function both. And the new programs are basically physicians and the nurses and the expertise in like cardiologists, oncologists that we need, neurologists for those programs. But for certain things, we need the building. We need the cancer center, the building. We need the new tower for certain projects.
Okay.
And in terms of the reality of where we're at now, our population is growing. Nanaimo is one of the 5 fastest growing regions in the country. And so we are already coping with a hospital that is over capacity, literally 24/7, 365 a year. And to build a new hospital, we are talking years and years. I'm not going to put a number on it lest I frighten anybody. But to do the planning, all of the architectural considerations, all of the medical considerations, all the considerations around the kind of equipment that you're going to be able to have in that facility to deliver the kind of quality care that people deserve and expect, that's a lot of work. So even if the Minister of Health came down, as I teasingly called him the other day, like Moses, and said, I'm delivering you a new hospital, it will not be next year or the year after that or the year after that. But if we don't get started now, it's going to be even further down the road when we have this significantly increased population. And as David has pointed out, a population that is aging and requires the kind of acute care, tertiary care, delivery of health care that's necessary.
Thank you. that was great. Sorry, I got caught off guard there. It was like, that was fantastic.
What Leonard said, and it will take a long time. But what is really critical is our patients and our care providers have hope. And if we get a new hospital announcement or a catheterization lab, which can come before a new hospital, that gives everyone hope. Whereas right now, we're overwhelmed and everyone's just, where do we go from here?
And getting back to the aging population, it struck me like not just odd, but almost negligent here is that with our aging community, we have no protocol right now other than sending people out when they have a heart attack. Is that not a bit of an issue? I don't even know what to call it right now.
I mean, there are different standards of care. The optimal standard, the standard that was established in 2003 was if you come in with a heart attack, we're talking about now.
Yeah.
There's many functions of a cath lab and many functions of cardiologists, but the most acute and biggest is dealing with acute big heart attacks. Standard is to be within a cath lab and have that artery opened in 90 minutes optimally. Well, we don't have that. We have, and then the next standard is to have that same thing. If you have a heart attack, you get a clot to try to bust up the blockage to the heart, and then you get transferred to a cath lab immediately. We are at the situation of getting, we have neither that. We have the third, which is an accepted standard, but for maybe much smaller populations where you get clot busters to open the arteries to the heart up and then delayed transfer away. So that's current where we're at, and that's an accepted standard, but usually for much smaller populations that are remote.
That population should, in theory, in proper care situations, be in a hospital, a catheterization lab within 90 minutes. And I'm not going to take a whack against a mayor in the Lower Mainland who criticized me because I raised this in previous discussions. Her complaint was many of her folks couldn't get to a cath lab in less than 45 minutes because of traffic and other considerations. It's 90 minutes plus to get over the Malahat in an ambulance to Victoria, and assuming you get instantaneous care. So you don't have to be a rocket science just listening to this tonight to know what that means for somebody who should be getting treatment in a cath lab.
And that's 90 minutes, clear shot, nobody in your way.
No.
It's not winter time, right? Wow.
Otherwise, can you helicopter everybody who needs it? No, you can't. There aren't enough helicopters in the world to do that. Can you throw them on a jet to Vancouver? No, you're not going to get that either. So it's a reality, and what we're saying is fix this.
And just a comment about cardiac care. I mean, as I said, the most important thing when you're looking at care besides the facility is the people. So we need cardiologists, but and what we've looked at the burden of disease in cardiology. So we have a greater number of people with every type of cardiac disease north of the Malahat compared to south. So it's a huge burden, and that's why it's fairly like, wow, we don't have a cardiac service here. And as Ian said, the largest population we can find anywhere that doesn't have a proper cardiac service in a cath lab. So,
and Victoria has two, I believe.
They
right?
do, and that's standard. You know, they should, yeah, that's standard. Yep. You need two because for many reasons.
So we're going to start with one. Where are we at with that project, Ian, as far as the cardiac lab is concerned?
I wish I had better news on that, Troy, but we've made some progress, some good progress on, I would say, 3 of the 5 projects that I mentioned. The cardiac cath lab, we have not seen progress on, to be honest, and that's why we continue to push the government to recognize the need for that in this area. And the new patient tower, which we realize is going to be mega bucks and a long time coming, even if we started now and got approval, but we have been given no assurance that that is even on the radar for Nanaimo, which is very discouraging to hear, but that's why we want to get this message out to our citizens and to the provincial government that we need to be aware of the situation, of how critical it is, and we need some action on it.
And is there somewhere people can go right now to vocalize or talk about their concern about this and the urgency, to press the urgency?
I think there's a couple of options, and Dr. Coupland can talk to the Fair Healthcare Alliance that's being established, and Leonard can speak, I think, better to the political aspect.
I just want to touch base about the cath lab, because there are some things in the background that I think I'm aware of, and I know Island Health is actually conducting, and I think appropriately, an external review for where the next cath lab should go, and I think that's exactly what they should be doing, and they are doing that right now. So with regards to the Fair Care Alliance, I'm actually not a spokesperson for them, but they are a group, a grassroots community organization of many stakeholders, and they've taken a lot of these priorities that we've come up with and are advocating as well alongside with us. And they have a website that is out there. But yeah, and we would agree with most of their priorities. So.
Okay. And that website was the weneedhealthcare.ca, I believe. I was looking that up beside. We'll have it down at the bottom of the screen so you guys can check that out. Mayor Krug.
Look, I spent 18 years in the BC legislature. I'm very proud of that. And you do learn a couple of tricks along the way. And one of them is that politicians, notwithstanding the cynicism about our system of government, which I will take any day over anything else that goes on in the world, the fact is politicians do listen. If you sent me a form email in my days in Victoria, that was one thing. You sent me a real letter, that was another thing. If you send emails from all of your family members separately, that's going to have more of an impact than one of you doing it. If you phone the office, that has an impact. Everything you do that puts you in contact with your local MLA and or the Minister of Health or the Premier or someone who sits on Treasury Board in Victoria, certainly the Minister of Finance does, is helpful. We have to be advocates. It's not as simple as the squeaky wheel getting the grease, but I emphasize again, politicians pay attention. And my standard joke in the last few months, and Ian's probably tired of hearing it, and so is David, what is it Dr. Johnson said? The prospect of being hung in a fortnight focuses a man's mind wonderfully. Well, I got news for you. Less than 6 months to a provincial election focuses a politician's mind wonderfully. So for heaven's sakes, reach out to the candidates as they're nominated and reach out to your sitting MLAs and tell them how important this is, that this will be an important consideration as to how they vote. I'm satisfied all of our MLAs up and down the island, in particular those north of the Malahat, are aware of and are working towards this, but it doesn't hurt to give them the kind of support they need and tell the members of Cabinet, and particularly Treasury Board, who make these kinds of decisions, and the Minister of Health, of course, that this is really important. And it is. I mean, look, it's not that no one cares, but you are always fighting priorities in government. For some folks, when they're young, all they're concerned about is whether their kids have a classroom as opposed to a portable and they've got qualified teachers. When you're older and you've faced some illness and stress in your family, you're very worried about health care. But we're all going to need it someday. And so I say to the young who are thinking about schools, recognize the fact you never know when your child's going to be injured. You never know when you're going to need the kind of care that can only be delivered in a hospital that's properly equipped.
So I think if I may try to sum up the answer to your question, there's two main avenues, and one is a groundswelling of support from our local citizens through this alliance which is being formed. And I'm sorry if I suggested Dave, that you're a spokesperson, because I recognize you're not, but I know they've been in contact with you for your expertise. So there is that. Our citizens, their voices need to be heard through their MLAs or through media or whatever to voice their concerns. And secondly, as Leonard has pointed out, the political advocacy which the Nanaimo Hospital District is providing through our staff and working through our political contacts to make sure that our voice is heard. And I have to say again that Island Health is on side with us. They recognize the needs of this region and they have been supportive of us. And again, I have to give credit for the Hospital Foundation here in town, which does what it can to raise the profile of the health needs and help fund them. And funding is something that we still need to talk about because that's a huge issue.
Yes, we will get to the money. You always follow the money, right? But I expect now that Adrian Dix and Sheila Malcolmson should have 100,000 emails by the end of this show. So let's shoot for that, shall we? Now let's go straight into it, since you opened up Pandora's box as far as financing. Where does the NRHD get their financing, or who's on the hook for this? Because I know there's a 60-40 split in some cases and 100. Explain as best as you can.
Sure, and thank you again for the question, because a lot of people again are simply not aware of this, and that's understandable. The only source of funding that the hospital district has is through local taxation. And so on people's annual tax notices, which I'm sure they'll be getting fairly soon, Your Worship.
We timed this perfectly.
Yeah, we absolutely did. Aside from the city taxes, if you look down at the bottom of the taxation notice, you'll see several separate levies. One, for example, is for regional libraries, one is for the school district, and there's one for the hospital. And so we as a board determine a hospital tax levy, which is approved by our board and which goes on people's tax notices. In the past 3 or 4 years, we have been aggressively increasing that hospital tax levy, and that's something that I'm happy to defend to anybody that asks me, because we realize that we have to raise money to put forward for these projects. And under provincial legislation, any hospital capital related projects, the district, the regional district, is responsible for 40% of the total funding. There are exceptions to that, and we'll talk about one of them later, I hope, but that 40% has to come from local taxation. So we're putting money aside now to pay for these huge project costs that are going to be coming down the road. Our hospital budget for 2024 will raise over $33 million. So we're showing the provincial government through that we're going to be as ready as possible to pay our share. And nobody likes to pay taxes, but as I say, this is something that I think most people can accept and say, yes, we recognize that if that 40% requirement is there, we better start putting money aside for it now. And if we don't do that, the government is simply going to say, well, if you're not doing your share, we're not going to step up with our share.
Exactly. Yeah, they want to show that you've got, a commitment to raising the funds that's necessary.
That's right. So these are all very big ticket items. And I'll just add on top of that in addition to the 5 major projects that I've referenced, every year we do get funding requests from Island Health for other smaller projects that they would like us to help fund. And we have to look at those projects and hopefully give assistance there as well. So it's a lot of millions of dollars.
And it's my understanding that for the longest time, the taxes going to that system, we were one of the lowest on the island. Is that
I would say,
correct?
If I could look back 5 years ago or so, I think the others, Leonard might back me up on this, we were probably the lowest on the island in terms of assessing, because we just didn't recognize the need to start planning for this. It's like putting money aside for a new roof on your house, and you better start now.
Yeah. And does City Council have any say in those tax increases?
Absolutely. And just to explain how the regional district system works, which is unique in Canada, the mayor of Nanaimo, myself, and the 7 highest vote-getting councillors by tradition and practice sit on the regional district board comprised of 19 directors. Parksville has 2 representatives, Qualicum has 1, and the city of community, Lanceville municipality has 1 as well. And then the regional districts areas A through H, I guess, not every letter of the alphabet, also have representatives. And so we have a significant say, and I can speak with confidence that the board itself, which is largely comprises, again, the Regional Hospital Board, recognizes this. And I want to go back to your point around what's happened in the past, and I don't want to fault any politicians from previous eras. Sometimes it's not clear, sometimes there are other priorities too. As I said, well, in the 90s it was kids and portables. That's what everybody was voting on in the 91 election. The Cowichan Valley Regional Hospital District started putting aside more money over a long period of time, and I think it's fair to say that the province took note of that, because every area of the province, given BC's incredible growth in the last few years in particular, let alone over the last couple decades, is looking for improved healthcare services. And so what's happened in Cowichan is a good lesson for all of us. We do have to set it aside. And yes, I appreciate no one wants to pay increased taxes. Everybody's feeling the pinch of inflation. But as someone, and I'm not looking for sympathy when I say this, whose wife spent time in ICU twice and is alive today because of the incredible work there in that aging old facility, folks, when you've got a loved one who's sick and needs care, you're going to really regret the fact that they're getting that service if it's available in a facility that can't deliver that kind of medical care in the way that it could be delivered in a proper facility, or get the care at all if it's needed.
Yes.
I just want to comment about the funding part. And we started this advocacy 5 years ago, and we went to the Mayor and Council and Ian and Regional District, and we really want to thank them for their support. I mean, without it, I mean, these projects we're talking about they're overdue, and like Mayor Krug said, we're not blaming anyone. Island Health actually has been involved working with us step by step over the last 4 years, and we're all in agreement we need them. So, but I really want to thank them for stepping up and providing the vehicle and the funding, because our patients and providers sure need them.
I don't want to go over the top in terms of extending thanks, but David, David and Donna Hayes and many others, the Hospital Foundation folks, Janice Brino formerly, and David Ellis, Perry Ellis,
Yes.
Perry Ellis currently, and many others in the community have been advocating for a very long time, and this is extra work. This is free work. This is them simply doing the good work in the community, and they merit our thanks. And together we hope that we'll be successful. But he's too modest if he's giving too much credit to the politicians. But thank you.
No, that's great. But we also have to keep in mind that a lot of people aren't thinking of is it's not just about taxes going up and the money going out. It's about the economy that it stimulates as well, right? The jobs that it creates. And I don't know if you want to talk to that, David?
I'll let Leonard talk over me,
Yep.
because I know they'll both have lots to say. It's, the bringing in all these different specialists, physicians, which we need specialists, and we need oncologists here, we need cardiologists here, we need neurologists, gastroenterologists, we need them here. But they're the apex of the pyramid. There's all the specialty nurses, all the specialty clinics, all the technicians, and all the buildings and resorts. It would be huge. And we have a tertiary hospital here. Where is everyone coming? Right to Nanaimo, and they're going to want to stay here. Yeah, it would be. It's like I liken it to getting the university here and things like that. It would be a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping in mind that even something like the delivery of cancer treatment, it's not like going down to PharmaSafe to pick up the drugs because you've got a fever, or you take bisoprolol to keep your ticker going in the right way. You need specialized pharmacies. There's a whole series of things, and I don't want to complicate this for the listening audience, but there's a whole series of things you need in addition to a cancer center, in addition to a cath lab that is required to support it. And as David says, you're attracting top quality people. It's boosting the local economy in every way. And it offers training opportunities for people in construction to work on a facility like that. You want that kind of expertise. Building a hospital is not like building a commercial rental building or some other kind of structure. It would be a tremendous boost. Keeping in mind, Nanaimo is the entry point to Vancouver Island. The goods that are delivered to Victoria arrive here. They don't come to Victoria. They arrive here and they're transported down the Malahat. We're a port city. Victoria is not a port city. We have a genuine port. We have big ships come in here and pick up what we produce and bring to us what we need. Having a proper hospital allows you to support that population in the way it's needed. But as David most importantly points out, it attracts all kinds of people who are looking for that kind of work. With great respect, there's not a lot of work for brain surgeons in Puskapay. But
Absolutely.
the population doesn't merit a brain surgeon. No offense to my mother-in-law's former relatives who live up there, etc. But having said that, Nanaimo could and should. We've got the population. People who have that kind of expertise want to deliver their services, and they need a place to deliver it.
I was wondering where you pulled that community out of, but yeah, go ahead, David.
Just about the training, because Leonard makes a great point. The opportunities for training will be huge with it, and if we know there's a shortage of everything, of every kind of medical personnel. If we have a tertiary hospital, we would likely have training centers for them here. And people will a lot more people will come and stay here. And so we'll have a much better chance of attracting people, training them, and keeping them.
It's the build it and they will come sort of.
Yeah.
I really think
approach.
that applies in this case, Troy, very much so. And I'll just add to the other comments that we've certainly identified truthfully that the projects that we're talking about are absolutely aligned with the provincial government stated objectives of building the economy and improving healthcare for its citizens. We're just saying our area is the area they should be focused on because we deserve it. We need it. We should be next.
And we have, and also we have to remember the new cancer center is going to be, it's already, the business plan's been approved, right? That was April 16th, I think that happened.
Yes.
And that's great news because we do have a video I'd like to throw to about Danica and Nick, this husband and wife. The wife got cancer in 2022, and they went through, I think Mayor Krug can attest to this, having personal experience with this as well, being sent over the Malahad, being sent across the water, 7.5-hour trips sometimes to Vancouver to get treatment.
We got married in 2021.
2019.
Oh,
Dear Lord.
Yes, 2019. So yeah, it's been 4 years. We got so lucky getting married when we did and traveled to Thailand for a month in October for our honeymoon, so that was really nice. So December 24th, 2022, I went into the emergency with a lot of chest pain. By the time I came out, I was told that I had the possibility of having lymphoma cancer, which was incredibly hard to hear. Christmas Eve, and within a week, we were scheduled in for a biopsy to confirm that it was lymphoma cancer. He sent me to do a CT scan, and I actually never left the hospital that day. I was sent over to Victoria for emergency chemotherapy, and of course it was a blizzard that day. Nick had to come down in the car following the ambulance because otherwise we wouldn't have a way out of Victoria.
Well, it was terrible. Yeah, you kind of go in blind, not knowing what to expect, and you just kind of learn things on the go.
Because they wanted to do a really aggressive chemo treatment, I had to go to Vancouver. So I was admitted to Vancouver because they didn't have resources in Nanaimo to admit people.
It was a nightmare. There was times leaving the Vancouver hospital where it took over 7.5 hours to get home.
The kicker to that was really being immune compromised and having to ride on the boat full of 1,000 people at a time. A lot of our appointments fell on long weekends. I had nowhere to go. I just kind of would either have to lay on the floor or, suck it up, which was incredibly difficult to do because you're just depleted in every single way possible. So with him not working all those days and taking so much time off to be with me there and to be with me at home, and then also I wasn't working the entire time, so with the cost of living these days, it's incredibly difficult. Luckily, we had a lot of help from family and friends. My mom was also diagnosed with lymphoma cancer at the age of 28. She went through chemotherapy and radiation, and it was cured. And at the age of 43, she was diagnosed with mesothelioma cancer in her abdomen. Unfortunately, she couldn't beat that, and it was caused by the radiation from her previous cancer. As a kid, we were traveling to Victoria lots for surgeries for her and just trying to get her the care that she needed. She passed away at home with us, and just because she didn't want to be away from home. It was a hard pill to swallow, hearing that, I could be going through this. And yeah, it's hard. You have to have the right mindset, and you have to be really strong to keep pursuing through it. So I haven't got a 100% green light yet that I'm cured. And every time I get a PET scan done, I have to go to Victoria. If we had this option locally, it would literally take, 10 minutes to drive down the road, and I'd be able to be in my own bed.
It would have taken so much stress and hassle out of the whole experience.
Yeah.
It's crazy to even think about. It's almost unimaginable how much easier that would have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mayor Krug, did you want to speak to that if you can?
Yes, I can, and the family name is known to me from previous association as well. So when I had a chance to meet her on the day that Minister Dix made the announcement, It also reminded me in her particular case that my wife has had cancer twice. The first, she was looked after wonderfully at Royal Jubilee for uterine cancer, got excellent care and treatment. But, you know, and I can say this as a privileged old guy, going to Victoria wasn't as onerous. If I needed a hotel overnight to stay to be there with her, it was available to me and I could afford to pay for it. And I'm very conscious of that. The second bout was a horrible, unusual cancer that required treatment at the Cancer Agency in Vancouver over many months. And again, not just the emotional burden, but the distance involved, the fact that everyone's trying to keep their household running. And I was in a very privileged position, and you could argue my wife was indirectly in a privileged position, as was our family. For many people, that's not the case. And so if you have a loved one who's having to have the treatment, there are no alternatives. It's Victoria or it's Vancouver. The stress on family and the inability perhaps to provide the kind of support to your loved family member, whoever it is a real impediment to their recovery. And so if we get that kind of treatment here in Nanaimo, it means that families can support one another in the way we expect. I think we sometimes forget what a wonderful healthcare system we have. One of my friends just recently returned from Mexico, and they had occasion to have to use hospital facilities there. In those hospitals, the families feed you. There is no food provided by the hospital. And so the expectation is that some family member is going to be there to feed you literally as you're getting care. In our system, it's entirely different. But the emotional support is crucial to recovery. So I can go on at length, but I can't emphasize enough. Having it here, keeping in mind the distances involved. You're from Port McNeill, you're from Port Hardy. It's a long ways to go to Victoria, it's a long ways to Vancouver. But in Nanaimo, you know what, Campbell River?
So yeah, it's a stress on the body, the finances, the family. And what is the first thing a doctor tells you to do in recovery? David? Rest?
Absolutely. Instead of traveling 4 or 5 hours back and forth, I've had friends who've had to take the 11th. My wife has taken our friends down, and they're exhausted before they start the trip, and then the cost and overnight and staying, they come back exhausted. So rest is very difficult.
And again, it's not just the Nanaimo area. We need to remember we're talking about the whole central North Island region that's in that situation.
And just we're not, we need the oncologists here. We need those medical providers here, because it is different when someone's right there and you have access to them. And we're not asking for anything else other families in BC don't have. We're asking for a similar standard for our population.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, the new acuity, high acuity unit, we have under construction right now. Do we have an idea when we could see that opening up to the public and being used?
I can answer that.
Sure.
Yeah. So the latest, it's coming soon, but somewhere in early 2025. It's under construction now, I believe. And so we desperately need those beds, and that will double our capacity from 12 to 24 critical care beds, 12 ICU, 12 HAU. And within that, we're hoping to have 4 critical care beds for cardiology, a CCU. So.
And that goes back, if I may, Troy, to my earlier comment about the fact that we have made progress on a number of these major projects, and I'm really pleased about that. So it's not all doom and gloom. We're getting there. So yes, the high acuity unit has been approved, and that was announced. I'll just mention that the Regional Hospital District contributed over nearly $15 million toward that project, but we're really pleased to see that it's on track. There was also, in October of last year, announcement of a long-term care facility to be built in Lantzville. So the government has approved that, and we're thrilled about that project. Again, the Regional Hospital District share is significant. It will be approximately $114 million we will need to contribute towards that. But it's going to happen, and we're thrilled about that. The Cancer Centre, I have to give credit that former Premier Horgan announced that that would be built in Nanaimo, totally funded by the province. And Premier Eby confirmed that some months ago, and now the business case has been approved. And so yes, that is going ahead, and we're absolutely thrilled about that. Hope to see it start construction next year. But I'll just note that there is an adjunct to that, and that is regarding the pharmacy and the oncology aspect of that, where the regional district will be asked for some funding to help with that component. So I'm really pleased that the Premier has stepped forward and agreed with these, and the Health Minister has agreed with these projects. And we're very grateful to the government for the progress that we've made. I guess, though, I need to state again, there is still an urgent need to get government approval for the new patient tower. We desperately need more beds and facilities, and we desperately need a cardiac cath lab here at our hospital. We need to be able to provide treatment in a timely manner rather than having to transport patients for acute heart issues.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely, I can't agree more. But 100%, how did that come about? Is that because he had his own cancer scare, do you think, or was it? Or it wasn't even scary, actually.
It was good news, but I'll defer to Mayor Krug on that one if he has any insights.
Is that Mayor Krug's fast talking, or we got?
I think that was the combined advocacy of us all. We had started the advocacy, and the three things we identified was the tower, cancer center, and cardiac services, and that was we had already been out in the community. We'd been to council and the RDN. And there was a letter writing campaign, I believe, at that time, organized by the foundation, and that went in. And I think Premier Horgan, to his credit, when he developed cancer himself, realized what a difficult thing it is to travel a long ways. Even when he's 5 minutes from where he lives, maybe, but someone coming 4 or 6 hours, multiple times up and down, he recognized that the need was legitimate. So good for him.
In fairness, the delivery of cancer services is seen very much as much more of a provincial than a regional responsibility. Mm-hmm. I can remember the arguments back prior to the 91 election about the cancer centre being built in either Kelowna or Kamloops. And I won't go into the political controversy that surrounded that decision, but the right decision was made by the government at that time, and it ended up in Kelowna as opposed to Kamloops. But it is seen that way. But it nevertheless is an incredible commitment of money. As my friend the chair on my left has pointed out, just our contribution alone, let alone everything else. And the numbers sometimes get a little staggering, and I can understand the public going, oh my goodness, I mean, well, when you're sick, there's nobody, you won't be thinking about the price tag if you require the service.
Leonard brought up a great point, and he's right. There are certain programs that are provincially run. The health authorities administer them and provide put everything in place, but cancer is one. PHSA runs this, and they run cardiac services, so we work closely with them as well. But we do have, and I'm going to give numbers because it's important, 53% of the cancers occur north of the Malahat on the island. And we have 0 oncologists, 0 medical oncologists, 0 radiation oncologists. We have some great GP oncologists who do a phenomenal job.
Now, is there anything we can do in the interim here? I think we were talking about having portables or mini labs that we can put in place as a stopgap until we get a new building, or is that just...
Are we talking cardiology now,
yes,
or oncology?
Yeah,
cardiology. Yeah, there are a number of solutions. If you look at what Europe and many parts of North America have done when it was became standard of care for a cath lab to be there when you have a heart attack. They built several solutions in Europe. They built standalone cath labs right attached to their emerge or right adjacent to their hospitals all over, and they built them fairly quickly, usually 3 years from start to finish. They did that in the United States as well, but Europe really pioneered it. And there are also solutions where you can put in portable cath labs that are hooked onto the emerge too, and those are 2 options before we get a major bill that are potential solutions.
Is this something on our radar right now, or the NRHD?
Island Health is the conduit
Okay.
for initiatives like that,
Perfect.
Troy, and we have ongoing conversations with them about what's the best way to approach this in the short term and the long term. But there's nothing definite at this point regarding those.
Okay. And I think one thing we want, sorry, go ahead, David, before we
No,
go on.
and this is, it's a solution that's been used all over Europe and everything, but it would be unique here in BC. But I think it's, there are 4 other sites looking for cath labs. We have to come up with a way to provide them, I think. And I to our Island Health credit, they're looking at, and I think the ministry as well. So we're working on it.
I'd like to focus on we've mentioned them before, but I think I'd like to get feedback from all of you about the people in the hospital right now and what they're going through. Incredible work that they're doing under a strenuous situation. David, did you want to start with that? Because I know you're working there, and
Boy, you've just opened up a can of worms, but I won't jump in. I think they're not desperate yet, but some of them are getting there. They need hope. That's what they need. Our emerge. We have the busiest emergency on the island as well, seeing over 200 patients routinely now. There are probably 40 patients a day in emerge on stretchers in hallways. They're not in a room. They're not, and they're trying to look after them with the busiest emerge, and they can't go up to the tower spaces because there is no room. And we have another 30 patients in stretchers all over the tower. So it is, and we have somebody brought up that our building is we had a 2010 review of the hospital, the physical site, functional and physical, very difficult functional environment for infection, delivering care, modern care, substandard. So this is the circumstances we're dealing with in the hospital. I don't know how our staff does it, quite frankly. They're amazing, and the care they provide is amazing. So we have to be very thankful for them, but we have to advocate on their behalf because, and they really are, they need hope, and this is how we can give them hope by saying, yes, these things are coming in a timely fashion. And there are lots of groups that are they're at the end of their rope, and they're ready to. So we need something. I'll just stop there.
And I think it's really important that when I or we talk about improving healthcare in the region, we're not referencing that we need more talented physicians or nurses or staff. They're doing a super job, as Dr. Coupland has indicated. We're referencing the need for improved facilities for those people to work in, to give them more hope, to give them the tools that they need to do their job. And everybody that I have come in contact with or has approached me has had nothing but praise for the personnel at our hospital. It's the building itself and the lack of facilities that we need to improve.
And the programs.
And the
And the new programs. Because, if you're an emerge doc and you have someone with a heart attack and they're sitting there for 8 hours and they should be in a cath lab, how do you deal with that? That's enormously stressful. So, do you want to comment?
I was just going to say, the cliche from everyone's lips, and I hesitate to call it a cliche, is exactly what Ian just said. People will tell you, people occasionally write, they'll sometimes copy mayor and council, even though we don't deliver health care, and say, the people at NRGH were incredible. I got the best of care, but they're conscious of how those folks are crammed and in spaces that are not adequate, and they are grateful for it. And as David emphasizes, and I want to emphasize too, at a certain point, do you want to continue in your professional life working in a facility that is inadequate? And we can lose people, people do move, people get tired, people retire early, people give up, people get sick, people suffer from PTSD. How long can you do this? If you feel that you could have delivered better service to somebody and there's an untimely outcome, and that's based on the fact that you were trying to deliver health care in, say, a 4-bed ward, it is by modern standards inadequate. There's just no, and inadequate is a very kind and gentle word. I'm conscious of the fact I'm, in a public place, so to speak, on people's TV screen tonight. But
No, and there is a risk, some people are burning out and they aren't going to be able to continue, so they need some help.
Is there anything we can do for them right now? Anything the public can do other than say thank you a little more, or?
I think Leonard laid out pretty well what they can do,
Yeah.
advocate on our behalf and look at the Fair Care Alliance. And
With 3 of the 5 projects moving forward, is there a sense of hope already starting, or is it too early for people to start feeling that way?
Well, I think the fact that we have made progress is encouraging in itself, Troy. And I think we just have to keep pushing to see these other projects started and completed. So yes, I'm not without hope, but it's a long process. It's a convoluted process to go through the Island Health recommendations and the Ministry of Health, the Treasury Board, and so on. But we've made a start, and as our message is heard louder and more clearly by the government, I'm hopeful that we will hear some response. And I'll just say that the regional district, our board has a financial plan in place to help fund our share of these projects. We know it's mega bucks. We know we're still going to have to borrow because the cost of the patient tower is going to be hundreds of millions. But we are, as a group, committed to putting the time and the energy and the resources into working with Island Health, working with the province, working with First Nations and the citizens groups that I recognize and value. We want to work with these people and see these projects through to completion. And time is crucial because, as I think we said earlier, even if the new tower was announced today, I'm sure it would be at least 10 years before we saw any physical start on it. So, in the meantime, patients and staff are suffering, and some patients are dying. That's the reality. So we ask the BC government, I guess, to prioritize, please, the remaining projects that we have. We are grateful for their help so far with what we have achieved, but we need them to commit the necessary funding to ensure that the tower and the cardiac cath lab get built as quickly as possible. And we ask the members of the public to do, as you've indicated, Troy, express their support by contacting their MLA, contacting the government, working with the community groups that are advocating on their behalf.
Perfect. Well said. Sorry, but we got to end it here. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Dr. Coupland, thank you very much for coming out. Mayor Krug, Ian, Chair Thorpe.
Ian's good.
No, I appreciate it. I also want to give a thank you to Megan Ruddle for planning a lot of this for us. I really appreciate it. So you got your call to action. Please contact your MLA. Put some pressure on these 2 projects that still have to be put forward. And thank you for joining us, and join us next time on the NOSH. Thank you. Thanks, guys.